So the pandemic has made recruitment and retention one of the hottest topics currently. 40% of employees said they are at least somewhat likely to leave their current job in the next 3 to 6 months, according to McKinsey. So what are the most important things an organization can do to recruit talent and to hold on to that talent?
Well, first of all, I think you have to agree that it is a hot topic. Some organizations would actually say they're in crisis and they're having to think about the ways to recruit and retain talent like they've never had to think before. I think in the past, it's been kind of like, hey, we're here, come to us, we're ready. No, if you think it's a one-way conversation, they're not coming. You are going to have to think about the way in which you recruit and retain individuals. That's very different. This is a hot topic in every organization we're working with, whether it's in the church, the for-profit, or the nonprofit. And we could go through and talk about each of these. I think there's a couple of things that I might suggest that help us to think through this idea of recruitment and retainment. Number one, it's a lot more money to have to continue to recruit people. So be the organization that cares well for the individuals in your firm, in your business, by doing sometimes the little things. It's not these big grandiose things. You don't have to send people away for, cruises. It's just little things that really add up to make a big difference. I think there's another one, and that's flexibility. Flexibility of schedule. I know Elon Musk came out last week and declared everybody will be back 40 hours a week or you will no longer be employed. But flexibility around people's schedule. Maybe instead of an 8 o'clock start, it works in your company to let them start at 7 or instead of leaving at 5 or 4. I think those are two character traits that I'm seeing. Number one, it is an issue. Like, don't hide. And number two, this concept of flexibility. How about for you guys, what have you found to be some of the most important things that organizations are needing to do either to recruit or retain talent?
Well, I think the old way of putting out the word or just, using even enlightened social media just doesn't work anymore. We start with the organization. Are we a place, to your point, Billy, where someone would want to work or stay? And if we can make ourselves that, word of mouth becomes an incredibly important way to get employees. The organization that I ran for many years, 2/3 of our employees came to us through word of mouth because we worked really hard at being a place where people wanted to work.
Yes, 70 to 80% of jobs right now are not found through postings. They don't even exist on a posting. They're not even identified as a present job. And so that tells you that some of the best talent is actually going to have to be found in other ways. Number two, I think, from my experience, and I think we probably have all experienced this, and some of the research out there actually affirms it, and that is culture first, compensation second. Compensation is very important, but compensation without culture never wins the day. Ultimately, people don't want to work in toxic environments. They want to work in healthy environments. And what's interesting is compensation costs a lot of money. Culture, it does not. It's free. It's a matter of paying attention to it, managing it, and making those small investments to make your place of work enjoyable, fun, enriching, stretching, opportunities for growth. Compensation's important, but it doesn't win the day.
If you get into the nuts and bolts of recruiting, the postings are often about this position or a list of tasks. What it's not about and what it really should be about is the mission of the organization, the culture of the organization, and the opportunity within that organization to move forward. If that's the first blush an employee sees, I'm far more drawn into that organization than just a list of things that I have to do.
There's some words that I've been thinking about around the concept of retention. I think we would all agree that if we can retain those who are talented and bring value to our organization, that's a much better cost basis than having to continue to go out and find new people, spend 3 to 6 months training them, and then hope that they work out. So how does stability play into this idea of retention? How does an organization pursue that for an individual?
I think it goes back to leaders creating clarity around mission, clarity around the direction that we're heading. So what's our strategy, clarity around expectations. And one of the things that I think leaders don't realize, you feel like you've said something over and over again, but many times as leaders, we can't say them often enough because people are distracted. You're not speaking with the same people every time you're talking. And so just continuing to reinforce that organizational direction, the organizational mission, what expectations are, is a great way for there to be stability and clarity.
It may sound like an antithesis, but Jim Collins said it right. Having the right people on the bus, in the right seats, going the right direction at the right time. So if you tolerate incompetence or you tolerate dishonesty, you're actually penalizing the people in that culture. So sometimes you have to let people go. And on the other side of that coin, we have often said, we're not going to create a position. We find the right person, we're going to go look for that person, or that person comes along. Teal would be a perfect example. We didn't have a position anywhere near what Teal does, but we knew we had the right person. And I think that's true of every one of us around the table. You look for the person that's the right fit. I think that's a key to retaining.
You know, we've brought up the issue of culture now, right? That came up in a couple themes already. And interestingly enough, most leaders, most owners, most heads of organizations, they really are not the best at assessing the culture of their own organization. And sometimes you just have to have a neutral person or organization or group help with that, because we all think we're doing a good job. Most leaders think they're doing a good job. We've had people tell us, you were with a client that said, talk to anybody, right? And they're going to tell you how great my leadership is. And it didn't work that way after you did the talking.
Yeah. Well, I was working with a large construction firm in the Midwest, and I think they were so anxious to get the survey of their staff. And when I actually got the results, I almost had to prepare them, because what they thought and what was reality was very, very different. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that the pandemic has had a real impact on their business over the last 2.5 years. And we came and delivered the report. They were so intrigued by the results that they actually brought us back for an entire day to say, okay, how do we fix this? And right, like for any of us, the ability to have the right information, Gray, you mentioned this earlier, to avoid blind spots, but then to say, I need help in fixing it. And we were able to spend an entire day going through that report and saying, all right, let's do this, let's tweak this. It didn't cost a lot of money, but boy, the value to the culture was important. And I'll just say this, maybe it's the privilege I've had, but I've been speaking to a lot of up and coming and emerging leaders. So I was with over 100 of them at Temple University speaking. And when we talked about compensation, when we talked about advancement, when we talked about culture, the ears perked up. Because that is important for young leaders. They want to know that the culture for them is going to be healthy and affirming and moving them in a direction.
You know, I want to come back to something that Dave said related to that, Billy. I love the saying that your culture will never be better than the worst behavior you tolerate. And often it's shutting down that behavior, or if you have to, let somebody go. And it's amazing what that can fix. If you've got a toxic personality on your team, it's very difficult to get beyond that. That person often, unfortunately, has to go.
So we've been talking a lot about culture and how important it is to recruitment and retention. Culture is a really important topic, difficult to change unless we really pay attention to it, and it often starts with listening. I like in the book Culture Code, they talk about 3 activities leaders can do to impact culture. The first is care. Care is often demonstrated best by listening, by slowing down, doing an assessment versus understanding our organization and our employees. Then the clarity that we bring to roles and how that clarity links roles to mission is so key to what we do. And then finally, communication. Are we giving opportunity for the back and forth that needs to happen? If we're doing that, our employees will feel listened to, we'll hear them better, and we actually start to impact that culture. As we impact the culture, it's a place where employees want to come to work, and that's really where we want to land.